All right, welcome to Insights as a Service. With me is a man who doesn't have a kitchen, Nick Phillips. How are you?
Hungry. I don't have a kitchen, so
Weirdly, we've got 2 out of the 3 of us don't have kitchens. I have a kitchen. You don't have one. Romain, our French producer over there, he also doesn't have a kitchen.
look,
Well, he does. He has
you,
part of a kitchen.
you got to be trendy.
There's a story there. I'm sure there's a story. But also just realized that we can't get the beers at the supermarket. You said you didn't duck down to the supermarket. We can't duck down to the supermarket for beers, but I did get some via Jimmy Brings as a plug, I guess.
Nice, true. I forget that about Australia. That you can't buy beers from
Mm.
the supermarket.
Have you guys got the delivery option?
We do, yeah. There, out my
Yeah.
way, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think
So you
it's
had
everywhere though.
options, just not the see-through.
Yeah, I just didn't
Okay.
plan ahead. I was like, there'll be beer in the fridge, or wine, or something, and there's nothing. So
Nothing. Okay, well, look, slightly different format this week because we're going to try and be super efficient as we do, which is to try and use the info presented here to also feature as the content for a resource video for our new Teams Phone ebook. And the whole point of this episode is going through the things that Teams Phone can and can't do. We'll try and break it down by section, talk through it. Nick, you're a bit of a subject matter expert, so I'll just run the segment titles, and you can talk through them probably. I did want to make one thing clear, which is I tried to get Romain to agree to having like DJ horns between each section. We were like, wah, blah, 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 blah. But he said no, so it's a hard pass. So cool. Okay. All right. Moving
this
on then.
sucks.
Let's
I'm leaving. I only came for the air horns.
Yeah, without DJ horns, it's a no go.
Yeah.
Veto. It's a walkout. One day we'll get a DJ horn on an episode if it kills me. All right, cool. So let's start with some basics. Can Teams Phone make and receive calls? I would assume so. It's a phone system.
Yes. Yes is the
Yes.
very, very simple answer.
Okay.
Probably couldn't call it a phone if it didn't. So
That's true, actually.
misleading product name if it didn't.
All right, section 2, insert DJ horn. Next thing, call transfer, blind and attended. Can it do it?
It can. It's called consult then transfer. If you want
Oh,
to,
they call it different titles.
different titles, because why not be different? So yeah, if you want to have a chat with someone before you pass them the call blindly, which is usually nice and stops your customer from having to repeat everything they just told you, then consult and transfer is your mastering tool. If you're simply busy, you might just want to hit transfer and send it straight through.
Yeah, I think consultant transfer or attended transfer, it should pretty much be the only option used. Nothing's worse than having to repeat yourself when you're calling through to some call center or service desk, and nothing's worse than taking a call from someone without any intro, no idea, just going in blind. So yes, good.
Setting up to
All
fail.
right, that's yeah, absolutely. In fact, you were talking about that around like sales etiquette a little while ago. As a whole thing about that when taking calls. Anyway, hold music. Talk me through options with hold music.
You can upload your own. It's not very
Okay.
exciting. Quality's not the greatest.
No limits like on number of options per.
There's a usual size limit and a audio quality kbps type of limit, but it's got it as a feature.
Okay. Any sort of no copyright included tunes that it comes preloaded with?
Not preloaded. That is very much the default though. Is yeah, whenever you are doing music in your transfers or putting any kind of if you've got an auto attendant and you're trying to play ads and things like that in there, then yeah, all that audio must be royalty free, or you must pay the appropriate duties.
So if you don't do anything of your own and you just run with whatever the default is, what's that? Or is there no default? There's like
From
silence
memory,
unless you.
I think it's just it's an injected call tone that just kind of rings and goes deet deet deet. I haven't done it for the longest time. I haven't put anyone on hold.
Okay.
Yeah.
You
I just like to deal with it in
never
the
keep
moment.
anyone waiting. Yeah. Yeah. Aspire to be like Nick. Never
Man of
keep
the
anyone
answers.
waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's talk about customized caller ID. I barely understand what that is. So first of all, what is it?
So let's say you want to, when you're calling out to particular customers, perhaps you might want to display as your mainline number, or you might want to display as your DDI number. Um, that would be how I opinion that, or be anonymous. Um,
Yep.
yeah. So yes, you can kind of do it as a blanket rule. So if you allocate a DDI to someone inside of Teams, or DID, depending on which country you're in, then you're not going. They're going to every call they make outbound is going to have that stamped on it. So if you want to do
Okay.
some kind of magical rewriting, then you really need a provider like Lightwire who can do a bit of translation on the SPC, session border controllers, to make that display as you wanted it for your organization and kind of hard set those rules.
So, like, let's take us as an example, just in this one case where we've got this Australian and New Zealand entity split with 1300 in Australia, 0800 in New Zealand, um, where you've got a single
Mm.
Teams phone instance. Would you just have two separate SIP trunks connected, each with different rules, or does it not work that way?
You could do that way. So yeah, you could. It kind of ties in with this kind of lowest cost routing design that they had there. But yeah, essentially you have two SIP trunks connected into Teams, and then you use dial prefix routing. So if you're calling Australia, send it out the Australian trunk. New Zealand send out the New Zealand trunk, but that'll still have the that user's DDI number. So if I've got a DDI number that's for Wellington, New Zealand, then when I go out those Australian trunks, it'll still show that unless we do some translation.
Okay. With you saying dull pricks there, do we have to put an explicit warning on this? Like, how does that work?
Dial
I'm just looking at.
pricks, dial pricks.
You said that, unless I'm mishearing.
It's
Anyway, doesn't matter.
call prefix, call prefix, maybe
I don't know. One non-alcoholic
dial
beer, and he's
prefixes. Yeah,
he's all over the show.
uh,
I was going to go somewhere with that, where you were talking about the lowest cost routing, but it's gone. So we will instead go on to voicemail and voicemail to email. Uh, what is voicemail to email standard? I'm sure it is.
yeah. It's there, and like all great transcription services, it's pretty average at handling the New Zealand accent.
Mm,
Australian accent, I think it does a slightly better job at, but
probably depends
each
on
to
the
their own.
accent, to be fair, but that's okay.
But yeah,
All right.
dot wave file in your inbox if you got it turned on. Otherwise, you can pull it out on your phone and in the app.
Actually, leading on to lowest cost routing, which you touched on before, yes, that's a thing. I know that because you just said it was before, like
Mm,
2 minutes ago.
I did.
So, do you want to just describe what lowest cost routing is for anyone who
Yeah,
doesn't know?
yeah. So let's say you got a big organization, multiple SIP carriers, you're operating in different parts of the world. Rather than make all your Australian users calling customers in the UK and make international calls, you just route it out an Australian base, a UK based SIP trunk. So it's about leveraging those kind of phone tools that make it more cost effective for your business.
Yeah. So, like a good example of a real world application of that would be where we have a USA point of presence for our teams calling, which means that if we have enterprise customers, I can think of Fisher and Paykel would be a good example of that, where they have American-based staff. They would be able to have those teams call directly out of America without having to route calls back to a SIP trunk off. Even though they're all sharing the same instance, that instance has different exit points, essentially bringing the PSTN gateway closer to the people making the calls.
Yeah.
Cool. Look at me go. All right. Next is mobility.
Mm.
Define mobility.
The ability to take calls on the go.
Oof.
Oh,
Sharp.
I liked that. Yeah, no. So with Teams, your phone is your go-to. That's pretty much how you're going to be answering calls when you're out and about. Microsoft Teams app, which most companies are already using, so no change there. You just get a little dialing pad inside of that when you're out and about.
Yeah. I think that's it's just a non-negotiable now with any kind of unified commerce platform. It's does it have a native mobile app, a native desktop app, and of course, if you really, for whatever reason, maybe you're on the reception or something, want a physical desk phone, sure, that's going to be an option too. But by and large, most people work off something other than a physical desk phone now, and the functionality goes wherever you are. So that's a no-brainer. Call groups. A call group being Sorry, DJ Horn. But call group being something that where you have everybody's phone ring at the same time. So perhaps you're a sales team and the sales option on the auto attendant or IVR is pressed, and then everyone's phone lights up. That's supported, right?
It is, yep. A couple of different options there. You've got round robin, or you've got the serial list, and it works its way through each progressive user, and the order of that is set by the where they display in the Microsoft distribution list or Office
Okay.
365 distribution list.
Well, just because it sort of ties in nicely to that, then call queues. Should we talk about whether or not they're supported? Because it's sometimes hard for me as a complete noob to distinguish between groups and queues.
Yeah. So if we think a group belongs in a queue, so when everyone's busy on the phone making those precious sales, the customer can sit in the queue waiting for one of those sales reps to become available. In the meantime, you can get your propaganda to them by uploading that web file, telling them about all the greatness that you're doing.
Propaganda. It's uh, makes me feel bad with my marketing
Yeah.
hat on. But okay, cool. All right. So if we've done call groups, call queues though we haven't really finished off. We've said what they are, but they're not really supported, are they?
No, they are. They're there. They're there. Yep,
They
they
are.
are most
Again,
definitely
shows
there.
what I know.
Yeah. And on those, you can set your own kind of rules for time of day, etc., as well, and kind of how that call flow, how long someone can sit in the queue for, when to send them off to a voicemail or transfer. Oh, excuse me, got that bear coming back, or
Yeah.
transfer them off to another department.
That's why we really should tread gin at some point. I hear the burp response is much lighter. Matt Bristow, a friend of the show, was telling me after our last episode that really beers for beginners, gins for seasoned podcasters. So maybe next time.
Wow. Next week, yeah, gins.
Yeah, next week. New week, new us. But okay, right. So call groups are supported, call queues are supported, time of day rules as a related function to the call queues.
Supported in a
Talk me through
basic
that.
form. Yeah, really basic form. So on and off. Um, 9 a.m. call does this. 5 p.m. call does that. It's not in all kind of in the general Microsoft sense of the whole phone system. It doesn't handle those really complex time of day settings well. So say you've got uh, multiple users within a team coming on and off at different times of the day. Um, it gets really complex to try and manage that with inside of teams. You'd end up having to kind of jump people in between different core groups to achieve that, and it's just a bit of a mind mesh. But yeah,
You're going to use a different word there, I
I
think.
was going to use a different
Yeah,
word
you're
there,
going to use a bad word.
and I was like, no, this is a solid, reputable resource. We will not swear.
Depending on which edit Remain uses, there may well already be worse words in this episode. But okay, so essentially, time of day rules can be put in place, but they're very limited.
Yeah,
You can't get particularly complex. So depending on how many teams you've got working in how many different time zones and the time at which different staff come on in a schedule or a roster, perhaps Teams phone might not be the best fit. That's definitely something to scope really well before
yeah,
diving in. Uh, okay, let's talk about similar vein again. Auto attendance, or what I used to call IVRs in different platforms. Auto attendance, it's a supported feature. Limitations, any particular? And I guess again, if we can just define what they are, that'd be a good idea too.
yeah. So auto attendant is your basic digital receptionist, which is sometimes what some UCAS platforms call them. But it's the very much press one for sales, press two for accounts, and for all inquiries, press zero. That kind of vibe. So you can set that up. You can control what happens if someone um, does nothing, how long they can sit there before it ends a call on them. You can have it go to call queues. So push one for sales and it goes to a call queue. You might have for your escalations manager, press three, and that connects directly to a user. That could be another scenario you have there. You could have it set to take a different action after hours, in which case it plays some different options. And it's like press one to be transferred to an on-call engineer, and
Mm.
then that redirects it to perhaps the mobile or something else. Or you could say push two to leave us a voicemail. We'll get back to you next business day. So you can kind of control how you want your calls to handle during business hours and after business hours. But the whole concept of the um, auto attendant is that it's a digital receptionist to really guide you through that decision making process and help you get to where you need to be within the business. And you can nest those as well if you need to. So push one for sales. It might be like for New Zealand sales, press one. For Australian sales, press three. That kind of thing. So you can split them up. You just start building more and more and more, replicating and every single time, which is a bit time consuming to set up sometimes.
Is that one of the ways that you can get around some of the functional limits, I suppose, within Teams Phone by adding more IVRs with each one, then giving you the ability to sort of reset the queues and the
Yeah,
groups?
and it does create a little bit of a you know documentation nightmare. Should
Yeah.
or what one do we do use to change this functionality set within the business? So yeah, it does kind of need a lot of thinking about the most effective way to deploy if you do have those complex requirements. Don't just start building everything from the scratch.
Mhm.
You'll hate your life. Uh,
And I
plan it out
guess,
properly.
the whole thing about this podcast is really aiming to add value for MSPs. And for MSPs, that's a great way to actually demonstrate value by taking the customer through that design and scoping process prior to deployment, even licensing purchase decisions, right? Just
Yeah,
really mapping that out, documenting what is our end goal here and how do we achieve that.
there's probably within the client base, there's very few people that actually know what their phone system looks like in a company. Like maybe the receptionist knows, maybe the ops manager knows how it's all meant to work, but key stakeholders across that business might go, well, how does this work? And then go, that's an absurd, that's so inefficient, that's not how I want my team to operate. So you can get a bit more buy-in like that and really add some unique value. um, the other key one that always pops up is that when you call an old company, there's quite often a lot of uh, disjointed or different people doing different messages across the phone system as well, and that sometimes just leads
Mhm.
to a really inconsistent approach.
I was actually thinking about that the other day. I hate when different recorded messages have different voices. It just feels really,
Mm.
I don't know, disjointed and kind of half-assed. But I'm sure there's worse things that could happen. All right, so
Sure.
we've done mobility, call groups, time of day rules, auto attendant, call queues. Let's do call monitoring. Please throw another horn in post in there, please remain. But yes, call monitoring. Run us through what that is and whether it's supported.
Well, by monitoring, we can approach that from a few different angles, but let's
Hey,
say,
look, there was a we have an infographic that says call monitoring, and I don't think I wrote that infographic, so I'm as clueless as you. But yeah, there's a number of things that could be. You
yeah,
just take your best guess.
I'll take my best guess and say, hey, you know, you're running a team, you want to do a bit of QA, you want to make sure that people are saying the right messages on the phone and not getting in too much of a pickle there. So by call monitoring, let's say it's using a listen in or a barge in functionality of the phone system, and no, that does not exist within Teams.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the maybe that and some of the ones we're about to go over really start to introduce some of the limitations to the Teams phone platform. Right, it's general purpose corporate use. Yep. Uh, Call center, service desk, not so much. So yeah, don't think that you can um, provide those kind of oversight slash monitoring functions through this platform.
Mm,
Call reporting and analytics, super similar vibe, right? There's no
yeah,
real time wallboard, retrospective reporting on which agent took how many calls, the average time to respond, hold times, etc. Just not there.
yeah. Even just looking at how a call traversed your business, did it pass through different teams, that kind of element. And then if you were to use something like call recording, actually, can you splice that entire conversation together, or do you need to like try and get a million different voice recordings off individual users? So I'm going to self segue into the next one, which is call recording, and that
Yeah.
is, yes, it's a new feature, but it's very much set as a per user functionality. So the user must initiate it. It gets saved in their OneDrive. There's no kind of compliance element to it that sucks it all back up into a SharePoint site and indexes them all for your kind of team leaders and managers and anyone interested in compliance to be able to access So maybe
That's
one
super
day.
important. Like, yeah, I'm sure one day, yes. I mean, I feel like Teams phone is just an rapidly evolving
Mm,
platform. But if you thought that, if you were a person who saw that Teams phone now natively supported call recording and thought that that would be a sort of a centralized, repository of call records that you could go back to look at, a caller's version of events versus a staff member's, or just to random QA. No, not like that.
no.
It just doesn't operate in the same way. So again, kind of useful from an end user. Oh, I'd like to have that on file so I can refer back to it at a later date. Great, but from a call center manager, service team lead kind of position, does not really help you much.
Bang on. You really got to go third party add-ins at that point, which is the next topic: integrations.
Yes,
So yeah, to
you're all
achieve a
over
lot of,
this.
I know I am
Segues.
mastering it. Don't even need you anymore. I just do it myself.
I'll see myself out.
Title man
Cool.
gone. No, but yeah,
Oh,
so yeah, you can do some third-party integrations, and that will help you achieve a lot of the kind of the advanced reporting and things like that we just touched on before. But if you're really looking for deep integration with things like Salesforce or Zendesk and ticketing systems and that kind of thing, then you're a little bit hard pressed by to achieve that. There isn't that native integration.
out of interest, throwing you potentially under the bus here, but to get a feel for Teams phone sort of innovation roadmap, feature roadmap, where does one go to source that and to get a feel for maybe how far off it is from becoming suited to a particular business's needs?
A reality. Yeah, so Microsoft do have a roadmap. Hop on Google, type in Microsoft roadmap, takes you to the right link.
I'm not
Um,
going to do that.
yeah, I was kind of hoping Remain would just do like a thing
Oh
there, right
yes,
there. Yeah, so
with a DJ horn.
yes,
Yeah,
please do that.
it's gonna be the
Um,
best episode ever. I'm pumped to see how this turns out.
That's going to be a good one. I'm excited for
Yeah.
it. This once you're in that website there, though, you can filter by product set, so not just teams. It's going to show you everything across the Microsoft ecosystem. So it's thousands and thousands of features, releases in there, and where they're at in terms
Oh,
of the
wow, I
rollout.
can see it in the big screen over here. Great.
Yeah, so you can filter down by
People can't
teams.
see this, but just out of shot, we've basically got like the Joe Rogan studio situation going here with like a big screen up on a wall. It's great.
Yeah,
Um,
and you'll
but
see
yeah,
see
it's
what's
quite the
kind of
list.
what they're working on, and they also have a kind of a submit us a feature type of functionality that sits in parallel to that. So that's really the user's voice um, being kind of passed through to Microsoft to work on development.
In your experience, what they say they're going to do compared to what they actually do, are they aligned? Miles off?
They always said call recording was coming, and it did come. It did come.
Yep.
So I think if enough people want something, it's there. They definitely prioritize based off demand, and it's a huge product. Phone system is just a very small element of Teams. It's kind of the dev priorities need to be balanced.
Okay. So in short, if we're talking about integrations, no,
No,
just no. Okay. No integrations yet. If you need something to integrate, don't rely on Teams phone. Okay, physical handsets. That's a thing. I know that's a thing. There's a
mm,
limited range, but they exist.
there is. So there's a number of providers out there that have brought out Teams certified handsets. These look like a physical phone, but they often just have a screen on them. You sign in with your Office 365 account, and voila, it provisions your phone on straight.
It does seem very easy. You ship it, you put in your dates,
Yeah,
done. It's configured.
there's kind of nothing else to do with it. Works
Yeah.
well for your Teams calls as well. You can get some with cameras on them. So you can, if you wanted to have like a little breakout room, you can put a camera on it, use it in there, and just sign into the phone and do that. Um, but there's a new feature out, or a new product line out, and yes, it does have another license. It is SIP gateways, and that if you've got a phone that's on the list of certified SIP gateway capable phones, you can leverage that old hardware investment and be able to basically connect your burning box on your desk to Teams and sweat that asset for a little bit longer, just to help.
Is that a pretty extensive list, or
It's not hyper extensive, but it kind of covers most phones within the last couple of years. So if you've just gone
okay,
out,
not too bad.
spent a bucket ton of money on hardware, and you're like, we're not switching phone systems because our capex expenditure on this is just ridiculous. Now you've got that option.
Just to put you on the spot even more, that SIP Direct, is it? SIP Direct
SIP gateway.
license? SIP Gateway, so close, not close at all. Totally different word. Anyway, the SIP Gateway license, is that particularly expensive? Is it in terms of an add-on?
Look, I honest to God, I cannot remember. I think it's somewhere around like $6, but
Okay.
I could be miles off there.
Between my lack of knowledge of the terminology and your lack of awareness of the price points, we're really adding a lot of value. So look at us go. Okay, that's cool. Physical handsets is a thing people can potentially keep, depending on which handset and whether they want to cop the price, which we can't tell them what that is. But otherwise, there's a bunch of supported models. Support. Let's talk about support for the Teams phone environment. There's two elements, I suppose. There's the Teams Phone PBX functionality itself, which would be a Microsoft slash MSP issue.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So that
We don't touch that, but what's the SLA around that itself?
with the MSP, I guess that comes down to their SLA. But the Microsoft one, if there's any kind of issues involving the phone system there, say you got a number and it won't let you transfer it to a different user, then you'd just have to raise a case for Microsoft and work through that kind of standard enterprise support from that. So can be a little bit painful at times, particularly if you're in a rush. Um, but you can also, pick your MSP, pick your partner that's, perhaps Microsoft Gold. They've got those little bit more urgency behind their requests getting answered. So that's where some of that real value gets added by partners rather than just working direct.
Okay. And then on the flip side, there's the SIP trunk, the Microsoft Teams Phone certified SIP trunk provider. We're one of those. A slight plug. It's the whole point, I suppose. And at that point, you want someone who's got 24/7 support and can essentially act on whatever's required. So yeah, the two elements are who are you getting the SIP trunk element from, and what's their support component? Which MSP is providing the end user support, and what's their status with Microsoft? I
Yeah,
suppose to wrap that
and
up.
I'm gonna unwrap it and put a little bow on it, and that
Okay.
you really want a provider that's got that 24/7 support because if you lodge a case with Microsoft and you want it to be dealt with as quick as possible, they're not necessarily going to come back to you by 5 p.m. It might be 7, it might be 9 p.m. At which point you really want to have a provider that can actually help diagnose some of those other elements that you might not have access to within the call flow. They might need some logs from the session border controller and things like that, and you want to work with a partner that can get you that outside of standard business hours.
Nice. Well done. All right. So that's support, and then we've got cost. Uh,
Mm.
I guess I'll add one extra one to the end of cost, which is just ability for MSPs to add value. But let's jump on cost first. You're going to give us an example.
Yeah, sure. So let's say we had 40 users. That's a good number. With the way we approach phone systems, it's always with a contention ratio. So you don't necessarily have a line or a channel per user. You use uh, aggregated trunking to get a better cost scale. So usually on a 4-to-1 ratio. So if we had 40 users, we'd take 10 channel phone system from Lightwire, and then that would rock you at around $600 retail on a 36-month term.
For
Um,
unlimited calling, though, in that scenario, right?
yeah, unlimited calling. I mean, the world's unlimited these days. Pretty much, most people are interested in
Yeah.
that. And
And
for
that's retail.
retail and comparative to whatever everyone else markets at, which is usually per user per month, unlimited bundled in there. So just trying to give a bit more insight there. But on top of that, you've then got your Microsoft licenses. So obviously, every user that is going to use the Microsoft Teams phone system needs to have a Microsoft Teams phone standard license that runs off the shelf for about 12.10. So 40 users, $484. Grand total per month is $1,084. Uh, yeah,
There you go. So I think if we're upfront about it, often what we find is people come to us and they say, "Hey, Teams Phone, I'm keen. My client's keen. We want to make this work." We run through the numbers. The licenses typically, typically, often act as a bit of a bit of a break point in the conversation, really. It kind of like, oh damn, that actually doesn't scale. It's the per user cost. Now, if you have a per channel and aggregated trunk model, the economy of the economies, the cost structure can work out. But yeah, it can sometimes be not the most cost effective solution. So then the question is really, what are you coming from in terms of overheads, functionality, etc. Are you going to have to add a third party integration to get some of the required features? You just got to map it out. And of course, the single sign in app for internal and external comms can add some efficiencies around administration, documentation, training, etc. So yeah, it's not a super straightforward equation. It definitely takes um, some time to really work through requirements and then go into the costs. So yeah, I guess just being upfront there that sometimes we do find people get all excited about it, and then when they get to the other side of the cost equation with the licenses involved, it gets less exciting.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft themselves have realized that of late. That's why they've brought out the Teams Phone Standard license, where it used to be called Microsoft Teams Calling Without Calling Plan, or Microsoft Teams Without Calling Plan. Um, a horrendous name, but it was basically twice the price for the license, and that was just like a why would I do this? So hopefully the new price point there, which was available, is a different SKU for kind of more enterprise users. Helps lower that cost down for probably the general market base for most MSPs.
Cool. And look, from an MSP perspective, last section from me at least, which is the ability to add value. Again, blah, 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 is Teams Phone, because it sits within that modern workplace stack, I suppose, the Microsoft app stack. Um, it's a comfortable environment for an MSP to add value within. And we as a telco, we don't look to touch that environment. We don't provision it. We don't support it. We stay out of it. So it really does add a new way uh, in which MSPs can add value by owning that ecosystem, taking that pain away from their clients, designing it, and provisioning it, supporting it, and really we're just there to make sure that that system can access the rest of the numbers in the world. So we have a fairly small part in what is a much bigger picture. So yeah, it's an environment that really naturally sits within the MSP ecosystem, I suppose.
Bang on.
Cool. Look at me go. All right. Anything else we should talk about with regards to Teams Phone?
Oh, the world's your oyster, but I guess the key
Is it
one from
really? In this particular subject, I feel like what's left?
what's left. There's some real detail we could go into, Teams
Let's not.
rooms and things like that, but we won't. We'll keep it simple. This is the basics that you need to know for
Yeah.
working out if it's right for you and your customer.
Yeah. And look, ultimately, everything we've gone through is why we at Lightwire decided it wasn't right for us. It wasn't a good fit. So we use it for our internal comms, where we use Teams for all of our day to day Lightwire team communications, but yet we do not use it as our PSTN gateway, our way of communicating with our clients or being reached by our clients. So hopefully that goes some way to educating those listening as to what to factor into your decision as to whether or not it's right for you. So with that said, we always have to try and keep these short or remain yells at us. So we'll leave it there, and I guess we'll finish by saying Nick Phillips, two L's. I always make sure the L's are clear.
Thank you.
On LinkedIn, or Nick at insightsasaservice.fm. Brendan Ritchie also on LinkedIn. Also Brendan at insightsasaservice.fm. Any ideas for future topics, let us know. Otherwise, we'll be back again next week. Thanks for listening.